Where to begin? Oh, yes. Okay, Simpsons. The first MythBusters question is regarding a MythBusters Simpsons tie-in that occurred. First of all, the Simpsons actually Simpsonized Jamie and I. We are in the episode "The Daughter Always Rises" about Lisa. Bart is watching a show called Myth Crackers, and when he's banned from watching it on the television, he's watching it on a phone. When he's banned from that, he goes to a gas station and watches it on the gas station pump. And that led to we got to go to a reading, a script reading on the Simpsons writing room, which was like fantasy camp times million. Watching those actors all read their parts while sitting around was really spectacular. And then that begat some really abiding friendships. Michael Price and Rob Lozebnik specifically have become really good friends. And I think it's the friendship that is the reason the Simpsons MythBusters tie-in ended up happening. And when we looked at potential things we could test, of course, we centered on the most physical, I think, of the testable phenomena from The Simpsons, which is, could Homer have really saved his house from the damage of a wrecking ball by inserting his own body between the wrecking ball and the house? I'm so sorry, I haven't even gotten to the question. Tyler James is the asker of the questions and says, I'm a big fan of The Simpsons. I love the episode where you tested if Homer could stop a wrecking ball. However, one thing that's always bothered me was it was never tested to see if he would have survived the event. What do you think? Would Homer have survived? So just to give context, if you haven't seen this episode, we milled a life-size Homer out of foam and then painted it with urethane. And when you take foam, here, so this head of me is open cell mattress foam. And when you paint this with urethane, you effectively create a captured sponge. And that's what Homer Simpson was. Like we painted his whole outer body and then we filled him with water to make him weigh the correct weight. Hold on a second, I gotta blow my nose. Thank you for your patience. So yes, we filled the Homer Simpson full of water, but I just want to say at the beginning, a life-size Homer in front of you is visually appalling. It's physically disgusting. Like he's just so malformed as a shape. He's not realistic in any real abiding way, and the uncanniness of it is spectacular. But so, whether or not he could have survived, hold on just a second. I want to just, before I get to that, I want to talk about the execution of this episode. So this occurs late in our runs, right? Probably 2010, 2011, something around there. So our crew is at the full size it was. It's at the like the properly running 12 cylinders all firing at the same time, kind of 22 people strong was the size of our crew. And we also had a lot of local vendors that we could count on. But this episode really hinged on getting a correct Homer. Absolutely vital to get a correct size Homer. And I remembered that The Simpsons had done a 3D episode in which they had generated a 3D Homer walking down like Ventura Boulevard in LA. And since I count friends in the writer's room, I called my friend David Silverman up, as one of the original director of The Simpsons, and I was like, could you help me find this file? And he's like, oh, first of all, we asked the person we were dealing with from The Simpsons or from the network, hey, could we get a digital file? And they were like, no, you can't. It doesn't exist. And we were like, we're pretty sure it exists somewhere. So I called up a friend and was like, could you get us this digital file? And he connected us to the right person who got me the digital file, and we started doing it. And then we got a call from the person we'd been dealing with at the network, and they were like, how did you get a digital file? This is a lesson about corporate corporate life, I think. Someone said this to me a million years ago, is that in any company, the only true power is the power to say yes to something. And almost nobody has that power. But the power to say no to stuff is distributed wantonly. And the people who only have the power to say no are pissed off about it, so they use it as much as they can. That's what I think I was dealing with here. Somebody who was like, that digital file was way outside their fiefdom. They had some reason that they didn't want that file to somehow become part of this thing for some dumb reason. And we had to do an end run in order to get it. It was so silly. But we got it. We got the file, and we ended up making that Homer by milling a mold out of giant, giant expensive chunks of engineering urethane. And I think we gave all of that back to production, or we cut it all up or something. The Homer went back to the Simpsons people. Oh, but would he have survived? If we assume that despite the visual obscenity of Homer's distribution of flesh on his frame, still includes normal human organs, I would imagine that the large amount of extra material Homer has would have protected him. And I think that it is plausible that Homer could have survived that wrecking ball incident. It was actually the fact that Homer was able to slightly minimize the damage from the wrecking ball was one of the more surprising MythBuster results we had in our run. I remember being really delighted. Were there any myths that you wanted to do earlier on but couldn't due to safety, budget, or other concerns that you ended up being able to test later on once you got more confident and well equipped? Yes, the thing that we got much better at in the later seasons was wrangling crowds. There were a lot of stories. You could imagine there were lots of stories that we thought, oh, it would be really fun if we get a bunch of people in and test this, test X, test Y. But within an ongoing production, everybody falls into their roles, and it is hard to add things to their plate. So just to give you a brief overview of MythBusters production, the story would be worked out in the story meeting, which is the first week of a 3-month production cycle. That's what our production cycles were on the show, about 3 months long. And it would begin with a week of just breaking stories for those next 3 months. And then once we break those stories and we feel like we understand their beats, that story gets assigned to one of our producers, one of our associate producers. I think at one point we had 5. In general, we had 4. And that producer would hold, that story would be their story. They would manage the permitting. They would manage getting the hosts, the materials they needed. They would manage the locations and the location relationships, which is paramount. Location relationship is everything in film production. You want every one of the locations you go to be so happy you were there. You want to leave them wanting to give you more business, not less. And we were really, really good at that. And so bringing in, like we were really good at going out in the field and filming an episode with the crew that we had. But if you wanted to add like 50 people to that, it was, there was this one time we tried it and it was so difficult and so expensive to feed everybody. Like, you bring a bunch of people on set, you've got to give them places to relax, some shade, you've got to give them some food, you've got to make them comfortable, you got to give them bathrooms. All, like, I'm not complaining about any of this. This is all just like what it's like to have people on set. And somewhere around halfway through production, if I remember correctly, it was Yvette, our producer Yvette Solis, who became really, really adept at wrangling large groups of people in a way that fit with production. Yeah, it's just that. It was like until then, we didn't have enough breathing room within our production office. It's just like we hadn't developed that muscle. And once we did, I think it was like the first zombie episode that turned out to be the one that broke the dam. once we realized we could wrangle large numbers of people, 50 people, 200 people, then it was really exciting because we could do airplane boarding. We could do multiple zombie episodes. We could do a Star Wars episode and call up the 501st and have a whole bunch of stormtroopers. Spectacular. And people, like, I still have people that come to my autograph line and saying, I was a zombie in one of your episodes. And here's something I want to tell you. When you like rent out a huge abandoned pre-20th century building and you fill it full of friendly, lovely cosplayers and locals who dressed up as zombies for the day, and then you set up your cameras and you say go, and all those people in perfect character start shuffling towards you with like blood leaking from their faces and their wounds, and they look like zombies. It's genuinely terrifying in a deeply delightful Halloween Horror Nights amusement park kind of way. Yeah. All right, let's see what's been happening here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the tested membership has become such an important part of the tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to, and you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.